Welcome to Love and Money Secrets TV. I am so happy and excited today. We have a wonderful guest with us. I can't wait to share with you Dr. Elia Gourgouris. He's the president of the Happiness Center. It's an organization for the world's leading experts dedicated to positive psychology, success, and happiness. And Dr. Elia is also the author of 7 Paths of Lasting Happiness, which is currently available in not 1, not 2, not 3, but 5 different languages, an international Amazon best-selling book. He's also the co-author of 7 Keys to Navigating a Crisis. And guess what? He frequently presents at international conferences and focuses on corporate wellness and mental health. So, Dr. Elia, thank you so very much for being here with me today.
You're welcome. And it's actually Elia, not Elia, but that's close enough. My name gets that's different ways of being pronounced. Elia, but that's
Elia. I should know that because I'm
oh, you're fine.
I'm
You're
part
good.
Greek like yourself, but I don't speak Greek.
Yeah, there you go. Of course. It's all Greek to you.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day and busy schedule to be here with us.
My pleasure.
Before we jump in, I want to ask our viewers to make a mental note. And before we get started, I want you all to be thinking about, on a scale from 0 to 10, what would you say is your happiness ranking? Assuming that 0 is you're not happy at all, or 10, you're happy off the charts. Dr. Elia, I'd like to pose a question to you. What's your number?
I think today I'm probably like an 8.5. I mean, I think we have perfect moments in life where you hit a 10 with an exclamation point, but those are fleeting.
Yes.
So it's more about consistency versus having those high moments. Although when we have them, let's be grateful for them, enjoy them, be present with them. But to me, it's the overall. That's why the book, there was a big debate when I wrote my book. Should we call it 7 Paths to Happiness because that's catchy, it's easier to read and so on. It's like, and I'm like, no, that's like pop psychology. Lasting happiness is the key. The word lasting is what matters. 7 Paths to Lasting Happiness, because that's what it's all about in the end. It's not some band-aid or just feel good for a little bit. It's long-lasting happiness, transformative happiness. So yeah, that's why consistency is the key.
Consistency is the key. And I love that you're bringing that distinction, because life really is, as we have our increased awareness with different distinctions, then we can make those adjustments to effectuate a certain outcome. In this case, we want to have the outcome be that we're happier. I've noticed that children, as a general state of being, they're very carefree, they're joyous, they're in a bliss state, they're happy. I don't know what the numbers and statistics are, but I know that children laugh way many more times a day than adults do typically. And they're usually in a state of joy and happiness. And then, of course, there's the contrasting, they might get angry and flustered over something, but generally speaking, they're very ebullient, they're very joyous, and they're very happy.
I had read that study. I think kids were like somewhere in the 200s, like 250 times a day, where adults were like 9. Like the discrepancy was massive.
It's massive. And, I remember when I first became aware of that study, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I need to make a concerted effort. I've always been kind of an easy to laugh, kind of a giggly person, but I thought to myself, oh, because I love to laugh. And so I thought I need to make a more concerted effort to laugh more, but not just laugh myself, but to remember those funny jokes, those funny antics, those things, quirks about myself, quirks of, that I see that will bring joy and laughter to other people, though, and I don't mind if they say, oh, you're being silly or this. I'm like, you know what? It doesn't matter. I don't care if you think I'm silly. The point is we're both laughing now. But that is a choice, because there was a time that I didn't make that choice.
Lillian, there was a study in the middle of the pandemic in the UK that said that if you laugh an hour a day, cumulative, not 24, not 60 minutes straight, the chemicals that are released in your brain stay in your system for 24 hours. Now, so think about that. So the greatest drug dealer in the world is right here. The best drugs in the world are right here. Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, I mean, endorphins, right? When we laugh, things get released. But the beauty is that they stay in your system. I wasn't aware of that. I thought you get released and they're gone, released and gone. But apparently, you laugh an hour a day, you're gonna be the happiest guy in the or lady in the world.
Yeah, and that's, I happen to specialize in repatterning the brain from physical and emotional trauma. And it's interesting because when you have a negative thought that creates anger, the chemicals that are released in the brain, and you have cortisol levels, you have C-reactive protein that goes up, that lasts about 90 seconds in the blood. And so in order for you to continue feeling mad or angry or frustrated or annoyed, you have to put that thought on a loop, which means that every 90 seconds, you're thinking the same thing to prolong the 90 seconds on and on and on.
Oh, that's interesting. I did not know that. Thanks for sharing that. Thank you.
In
Wow.
in contrast, when, like, for example, right now, as we're doing this interview and we're having you here as a guest, we're both in a very joyous, excited, happy, open-hearted state. So our brain is literally give us not just endorphins, but we actually have an oxytocin bath that bathes our entire brain, and then it goes throughout our blood system and it just flows. And as we continue, I'm sure we'll have funny moments during this episode here, but as we continue in this positive, enlightening, process, because we're very interested in speaking about the topic of happiness, we continue to kind of massage those endorphins and oxytocin, baths of the brain that it literally is heartwarming, and it helps bring our blood pressure down. It helps our heart rate variability and so much more.
Indeed. Let's go. Let's get started.
So let me ask you, so going back to your childhood, because we did talk about how children laugh 200 times a day, and as adults, we only laugh like 9 times a day, which is crazy. That's like, 20x difference, right? So when you were a kid, was there a favorite childhood character that you used to play, pretend, make believe, like with your siblings or with your neighbors and friends?
Wow, you know what? I've never even asked that question. I don't know if I had something like it, but I was always drawn to comedy. I remember that. Like I used to like, and when we moved to the United States, I was like 10 years old, and really where I learned my English like really well was cartoons. Like I'd come home from middle school and parents both working, and I'd sit in front of the TV and watch all the cartoons and laugh hysterically. So and to me, it tickles my funny bone. I mean, obviously we all want to watch media and deep stuff and inspiring stuff and some drama and so on. But I'm really drawn to comedy. I'm drawn to comedians. I'm drawn to wit uh, that makes us laugh, and I'm drawn to people that have a perspective on life with a sense of humor in it. So when I give my keynotes all over the world, I certainly use a sense of humor. I do it in my own personal life. I don't take myself too seriously, which is the other thing. And the older I get, the less seriously I take him. And my wife would say, you're like Peter Pan. You have like a childlike or little boy in you, even after all these decades. I'm curious as a human being. I'm fascinated by things and learning new things, which, by the way, as long as we're learning, I think that greatly contributes to our overall sense of fulfillment. And, Michelangelo, probably he and Leonardo da Vinci, the two of the greatest in terms of the Renaissance. I mean, they're, on the Mount Rushmore, right?
Mhm.
When he was old, this is after he did the Sistine Chapel, this is after David, this is at the end of his life. They asked him, Master, tell us something, share something wise with us. You know what his answer was? This is at the end of his life. I am still learning. Who said that? Michelangelo. So for me, if Michael is still learning at the end of his life, we should be doing that every single day, learning something new every day.
I love that. It's funny because I have told people in the past, I'm a life learner. I like to learn from others. I like to read books. I like to learn from mentors, workshops. I like to do self-directed education as well. And I've told people, I will be learning all the way up until I take my last breath, because the last lesson I will learn is how to let go and to shake off my meat suit and release my spirit. So I will learn to die in the physical and continue to live and grow in the non-physical. So I see myself as learning all the way to the very, very end of this 3D world. And so I never knew that about Michelangelo, though.
Isn't that something though? Think about it at the end of his life, not when he was starting out, because that would be make sense. At the end of his life, that's really profound.
That is profound. And perhaps that's part of where the magic of his genius came in, because he allowed for growth and expansion through his life as an entirety.
You know, the other thing is that it's not even just Michelangelo. Socrates, I'm Greek, right? So Socrates was the at the top of all the Greek philosophers, the golden age. When he was asked, Master, tell us something that you know definitively, his answer was, the only thing I know is how much I don't know.
Yes.
Right? So, and we live in an age where knowledge and information is at our fingertips. If it doesn't come in within under 5 seconds, we get upset. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can find anything. Everything's at your fingertips. The entire library of Alexandria, the greatest library in the history of the world, you know, is at our fingertips and then some now. And information is pouring in. So there are no excuses, honestly, for not learning, for not growing, for not expanding your consciousness.
Yeah, I agree with you. Today, more than ever, ignorance is a choice. You can choose to know or you can choose to not know. But the other thing more than ever before is that we have to like collect, capture, and and convey what information. We have to be better curators of what information it is that we let in, and really be more selective about, because we get to choose the energy that we show up with in a place, but we also get to choose what energy comes into our experience. And the same thing is with information and with knowledge. So we have to be a little bit more discerning, kind of be more tuned in with our inner being, wouldn't you say, in order to not just preserve our happiness, but our vibration. So moving forward, you just have, you see what the collective is, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to take this. No, I don't think so about that. What is your opinion on that?
I don't think we need to be a little bit more discerning. I think we need to be a lot more discerning, because we are bombarded by messages, often fear-based messages, or falsehood, or fake news, or whatever. So I think our filter and our awareness of what's coming into our consciousness is vitally important. So, several years ago, I kind of stopped watching the news at the beginning of the pandemic, especially. I'm like, I'm not going to watch this anymore, which doesn't mean I'm not educated or informed, but I would go to my own sources that I trust, that are more, they're not left wing or right wing or whatever, they're the right wing. What I'm saying, like, I'm meaning and I would take the information, because I'm a global citizen, and we raise our kids to be global citizens and world citizens. And I study and I read every single day, but it's through my own filters. And because I'm not a fear-based person, I try not to be anyway. For the most part, I'm not actually. It really, I wrote this book with a co-author of this book, which is the 7 Keys to Navigating in Crisis, was the first book about the pandemic in the world that came out, because it came out in May of 2020 in the world about the pandemic. Because I got a download, like a download as clear as I'm talking to you right now, March 15th, which is the symbolic day in literature. Beware the Ides of March. That's Julius Caesar in Shakespeare, right? And the download was Elia. There's going to be, remember, like March of 2020, at least in the United States, was the very beginning. Like New York was having it pretty bad, but it hasn't really spread fully or globally as much. And I got the download that said, there's going to be a mental health crisis, a tsunami as a result of the pandemic. They're going to sweep the planet. And you need to get a book out to address that. And you need to do it in 45 days, end quote. And I'm like, 45 days? It took me 4 years to write my book, my first book, the happiness book. That's absurd. I'm like, is this a joke? Like, I am going to get a book out in 45 days. That's a joke. But I called my best friend that night and I said, listen, this is what I downloaded. I'm going to start writing tomorrow. I can't do it on my own. I need your help. Are you in or are you out? And he said, brother, I'm in. And I kid you not, we did nothing for the next 45 days, morning, noon, and night. That's all we did. And we got it out in May. What's funny is that initially was to help people how to navigate, not just the pandemic, but really how do we navigate challenges that we're facing? Because crises come and go. We're not always in a crisis, unlike what the media will tell you, which is breaking news, blah, scare you to death. Not true. Breaking news actually are breaking news that happens once in a blue moon. You cannot have breaking news every hour. And that's with the music and the fear and all that stuff. So, and I had to walk a fine line as a public speaker, and and of course everything was happening on Zoom by then, because there was two sides. You have Get the vaccine, don't get the vaccine. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask. And they were so divided in so much vitriol and anger and even hate, like nobody's listening. They're just, you know, screaming louder. That's all they're doing. So when I would speak, and I got interviews from all over the world, and I think it's because of the way I presented things. Sometimes I would get pushback from some, like here, like on like people like, well, it doesn't sound like you're taking this seriously. I'm like, no, I am. I'm taking it seriously. I'm just not afraid. Well, what if you get sick? I'm like, okay, and then what? Well, what if you get really sick? I'm like, okay, and then what? Well, what if you die? And then I would really lean to the camera. I'm like, and then what? I'm not saying I want to die or I'm being reckless. What I am saying is I refuse to live life in fear, period. And that would like shut them up. Like, I mean, that would like, oh, okay. Because they're not used to people saying that. I'm like, aren't we all going to die? I mean, I'm not saying that I want to, but I can't live in fear. That's worse than death to me.
That's, yeah, and I kept on saying the same thing during the pandemic. I'm like, you know what? The worst virus right now is the fear virus, because we've always had genetic mutations of bacteria, of germs, of viruses. That's nothing new. But the way this whole thing was framed, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're manipulating people with fear. And I refuse. I have an aversion to being manipulated, and I have an aversion to anyone. That's like a red flag to me. As soon as I see someone is using fear, they're trying to curb my behavior or trying to get me to do something using fear. I'm like, I'm on to you. I go, what's the worst that can happen? I can die. It's like everybody is going to die. So it's like, I happen to be one that's not afraid of death. I know a lot of people are afraid of death, but more people are afraid of public speaking more so than death. I also am aware of that. But for me, it's like, I'm not afraid of public speaking. I'm not afraid of death. And so to me, it's like, you know what? It's like, no, that it doesn't trigger me, and it doesn't have a hold on me. So I'm free to be who I truly am, and to pay attention to the signs, the symbols, and synchronicity that are in front of me, because they're there. But when you're in fear, you miss all of them, because you're in so much fear that you cannot think. The brain automatically stops when you're in fear.
And I think sometimes we make decisions when we're in a fear mode that are not to our well-being. It's not in our best interest. I'll put it that way. I mean, there's certain aspects. Sometimes fear is important. Like if I had no fear that I can stand in front of a bus going 60 miles an hour, okay, then I would probably get hit pretty hard. But which is to protect us. But for the most part, outside of those things, which is about physical safety, I don't think fear is my friend in all the other. It's kind of funny what we discovered in writing the book. When people face challenges, they typically fall into 4 different categories. And the first one is the victim modality, meaning, why is this happening to me? Poor me, right? As if it's only happening to me, not 8 billion other people. That's number one. The second one is the critic, and you talked already about being angry. And the critic will blame, get angry, frustrated, just mad, everybody, their significant other, their kids, their boss, the government, the president. Well, it doesn't matter. They're always mad. They're just frustrated, right? The third group is what we call the bystander, basically somebody that was especially true during COVID, who were so overwhelmed by the changes or feeling so out of control because, they're being controlled from the outside, that they were frozen in fear, kind of the deer with the headlights look. And what all 3 of these personality types or modalities or reactions to the challenges of life have in common is that none of them move the needle forward to some kind of positive resolution. Then you get to the 4th type, which is the navigator, which was the whole premise of the book, actually, is like, how can we navigate life successfully and still maintaining our purpose, still maintaining our happiness and our engagement? But before I go on to like what navigators do consistently and successfully, here's the thing, and this is my clinical psychologist had. That was the first half of my career. All 4 of it's not like, oh, Dr. Elia or Lillian, we're navigators, and the rest of you are, this. No, it's not like that. All of us have all 4 of those within ourselves. They all exist because we're human beings. So, and I'll give you a personal example. Talking about the deer with the headlights, like in March of 2020, in 1 week, all my speaking engagements all over the world got canceled. Yeah. Email after email. Dear sir, sorry to inform you, this conference has been canceled due to blah, blah, blah. So initially, I did have the deer with the headlights. Like, I'm like, oh no, what am I going to do? And I did have kind of like poor me a little bit. Like I was supposed to speak in Barcelona, which I city that's beautiful. I've never been to in October of 2020. And I'm like, oh, I've always wanted to go there. I'm going to get to be a keynote, blah, blah, canceled. I mean, actually, the conference did happen, but it was on Zoom. It was different. It's not the same as being live, anyhow. So victim, yeah, poor me, kind of like, right? Or there were things that happen, social media and government and so on, that sometimes I did get kind of mad, and rightly so, I believe. However, if I stay mad at the government or some other entity outside of myself and so on for 6 months or 6 years or 60 years, who am I hurting? No, seriously, who am I hurting, them or me? If I stay in my victim mode, and there's a quick way to get out of that. It's like, instead of saying, why is this happening to me? It's like, perhaps I should say, why is this happening for me?
Yes.
Because you know what the funny thing is? Initially, I'm like, oh my gosh, all my speaking is gone. What am I going to do? Number one is, so what the call to action is, if you're going to be in victim mode, do it for half an hour and then pivot and shift and become a navigator. If you're going to get mad, do it. Get out of your system. That's normal. But don't stay there. Pivot and become a navigator. So here's the funny thing. Number one, I wrote the book. There was no plan to write a book in 2029. My life was full. I had no time. But guess what happened? Life happened. There was an opening. I got the message from above. I downloaded it, and then I moved into action. The book came out, which as a result of that, I probably spoke in front of 50 to 60,000 people in 2020. It happened on Zoom. It wasn't like what I had planned, but part of what navigators do really well, Lillian, is that they're very flexible and adaptable to what's happening in front of them. And we use the story of the oak tree and the palm tree. And I love both oak trees and palm trees. But oak trees, they're these beautiful, majestic, huge trees. They've been around for, could be 100 years, 100, 200 feet tall, beautiful, stable, lovely. However, so I don't have anything against oak trees because I love them. I'm just saying, however, in certain circumstances, during a storm, if there is enough rain and enough saturation in the ground, coupled with massive winds, guess what happens to oak trees? They come crashing down on people, cars, and homes. This happens every hurricane season, right? Palm trees, on the other hand, which are kind of cute and exotic and tropical, whatever, right? At the peak of the storm, Lillian, I want you to think about the storms of life. Palm trees will bend. Sometimes they bend parallel to the ground, like flat. But then
Yes.
when the storm passes and the sun comes out, like every storm in life passes, guess what happens to palm trees? Whoop, they come up. And not only are they up right now, but they are stronger than they were before because the roots had to dig and hold on for dear life at the peak of the storm underground, hold on for dear life. So the call to action is, when you're facing a challenge, not always, but when you're facing a challenge or a crisis, be a palm tree, don't be an oak tree. And so people have said, like, oh, that's a cute story, Doctor. We like, I can remember that. But seriously now, what does an oak tree sound like in human form? A great question.
What?
Like an oak tree is somebody, even in the middle of the crisis, the wind is blowing, so on, right? The storms of life. They're like, well, this is who I am, and I refuse to change. And that happens with organizations. It's not just a individual, it happens to organizations. They refuse to change because what got them to that point, being an oak tree, let's say, made them successful. But guess what? The conditions now, whether the conditions in the marketplace or the conditions in your heart or the conditions in your family, have changed. So now you can dig in your heels and you're going to get blown over, or you can pivot and be flexible and adaptable and try something different and unique. I didn't even know what Zoom was, to be honest with you, before. I'm not a technical person. I'm a people person. But when I switched, because I couldn't do anything live, all these doors opened up throughout the world. I had access to, you know what I'm saying? That's what a navigator does. That's one of the things that they do anyway. Flexible and adaptable.
I love that. So I want to bring to light, because I know that you basically have the benefit, really, of the rich history of having the best of both worlds, because you were born in Greece. So you know what it's like to live in the old country, quite literally, where for the first decade of your life, your formative years was in Greece. And we know that, like I said, I'm part Greek, I'm also part Italian. And I know that there's certain expectations and certain ways of doing things. And the group as a collective, there's a certain personality type that we have that is very unique to us. But then you come to the United States, and here in the United States, everybody is from everywhere. So as a culture, we are a melting pot of a lot of different, personalities, a lot of different ways of thinking and so forth, a lot of different religions, a lot of different customs and so forth. So what does that take, or what does it mean to you to have the best of both worlds? And what have you gained as a benefit from having the best of both worlds?
I love that question. Again, that's the second time you're asking a question I've never been asked before. So it's fascinating that you actually even use that phrase. So when we moved here, I was 10 years old, going 11. And we moved because my mom got cancer in UCLA Medical Center. I mean, had she stayed in Greece, she would have died a lot sooner than she died when she was in the US. That was one of the reasons. There were multiple reasons why we moved. But it was hard because we had a great life in Greece. So we're not the typical like, oh, you're like, there were reasons why. So we were very sad when we moved here. And my father, God bless him, sat us down, my brother and I, and said, listen, boys, because he could see, and we were all sad. He says, there are things in the United States of America that Greece is not going to get to in 100 years. The opportunities, just the American, all that stuff. However, he said, there are things in Greece that America is not going to get to in 1,000 years, meaning the whole culture, the food, the whole thing, the essence of, this amazing heritage. So he said, to use Lillian's word, I want you to take the best of both worlds and leave the rest behind. And that was one of the wisest statements. I'm so grateful to my father because I deeply love America with all its, faults, and, and I deeply love Greece. So what we did growing up was like, take the best of both worlds. And when I had my own family and raising our own kids, I'm like, well, you're not American or Greek. My wife's half German or half Armenian, the other side of her family. I'm like, world citizens. Take the best, not just of these two worlds, Greece and America, because we travel a lot with our kids. Well, we'd rather travel with our kids than give them gifts. We give them experiences.
Exactly.
Every culture, Italy, France, Canada, whatever, Costa Rica, it doesn't matter. There's beauty in every culture. Israel, I mean, we've been to, we've traveled a lot. Like every culture has. It's good and has things that are challenging, of course, but lean into it. Taste the food. Enjoy the architecture. Learn about its history. Speak the language. At least try to speak the language. Make an effort anyways. And when you do that, magic happens because, all the isms are due to ignorance. All the isms, like we have a lot of isms, like, sexism, racism, like we can go on and on. It's based purely on ignorance. When you break bread with somebody from a different culture and you spend time together, what happens? Magic happens. That's what happens.
Unites you, yeah. It's a very heartfelt experience. You're engaging, not just speaking, you're using your mind to speak, but you're also tactile with them. You're sharing in the same food source in a beautiful setting. And so I'd like you to elaborate with that, because I know that on Rich's, you were on Rock the Stage Media with Rich Bontrager. And on that, during that interview, you said that you can't hug a phone. And it's wonderful. Zooms are wonderful, no question about it. Our cell phones, they can connect us. I think they connect. It's kind of an oxymoron. It connects and disconnects us at the same time.
Exactly.
Sometimes people opt just for the phone call, or not even a phone call, just a lower degree of communication, which is a text message, instead of actually physically meeting with people in person. And there's nothing like being face to face, eyeball to eyeball, belly to belly, breaking bread with someone. Oh, that warm embrace. During the pandemic, there are many people that I got to know that I would have never have known. In fact, I have right before me, I'm going to share with you, wasn't planning on doing this, but it just so happens it goes with what we're talking about. I met a lady who is in Oahu, Hawaii, and I started this 90-day consciousness heartmate experiment for people who were single to meet their soulmate. And so Terry recently sent me this. I'm going to see if I can bring this up.
Oh, yeah. I see it.
It's a 4-leaf clover. And she sent me this 4-leaf clover because she noticed that I always wear, today I'm not wearing it, but I usually wear this gold 4-leaf clover that has a ruby and this little pearls around it, which is an heirloom. My mother gave it to me when I was 18 years old. And so I wear it quite a bit. And so she sent that to me. And when I received the gift, she said, I wanted to give that to you because she goes, I know for a fact that I probably would have not have ever met you had it not been for the pandemic. And you brought our whole community of mostly Dr. Joe students that were single who wanted to connect. And it's like now we're even more lonely because many people were during the pandemic with their wife, with their fiance, with their boyfriend, but many were like alone, where you don't have a partner, you don't even have a roommate, right? And so there are several of the people from the group that I've actually been able to meet in person. And oh my gosh, when you meet them in person, it's like a family reunion. It's like you kiss them on both cheeks and that warm embrace where neither of you want to let go. You can't do that over the phone. You just can't.
And we know that intuitively, but research has also supported that. The great study about, if you hug somebody for 30 seconds, what happens to our brains? Typically, and Greeks are a lot, and Italians too, the whole Mediterranean, they're a lot more like touchy-feely hug. And a lot of times in the US, we'll hug and like pat on the back, not a real hug. But I'm talking about an embrace, and you stay there, especially with people you love. Obviously, I don't know if I would do that to a total stranger. They might kind of weird. But when you have that and you don't say anything and you just feel and you connect like that, there's no phone, there's no Zoom, there's nothing that can ever replace the human touch. And one of the unfortunate byproducts of the pandemic and the way that it was handled was the the explosion of loneliness.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, loneliness continues to be at epidemic levels around the world, which is so sad to me. Yeah, it needs to be addressed, like really.
So this is really interesting. I want to share something because and there's plenty of studies of this. We have, studies with humans and we have humans with dogs, humans with animals, but our autonomic nervous system actually entrains with those that we are with. And so our autonomic nervous system and our subconscious mind obviously knows things that our egoic brain and our left brain is not aware of because it's not in our conscious mind. But when it comes to hugs, our nervous system is so finely attuned that when we are in resonance with another human being and we come together and we hug them, when we're hugging them, you will have a long embrace with someone when you are in coherence with that person. So you will have that long embrace, even if that person is a stranger, but because you're in resonance, you will hold on to them.
Interesting.
In contrast, and this could be, let's say it could be a female hugging a male for the first time, or it could be female to female or male to male. It doesn't matter. This is true. Just as an indicator, when, for example, from a dating perspective, if a female finds herself hugging a man, maybe you're on the first date and you notice that within seconds, you start patting their back, that is your autonomic nervous system signaling to your body that you've had enough of this person, that there's something in their nervous system that doesn't resonate with you. So you're ready to let go, which is why we do the buddy tap. It's not a conscious thing. It's a reflexive thing that you will begin to do. A man will do it. A woman will do it. It's something that you can't help yourself.
Interesting. I didn't know that. That's fascinating.
Called the buddy tap. So when you're hugging your friends and so forth, you can tell, like a lot of your friends, you don't do the buddy tap. You're just hugging them. You'll hold them on,
Yeah, because it's safe.
Because it's safe. And then after you've been holding for a while, then you might tap them. But if you find yourself after 30 seconds, it's like, okay, and tapping, doing the buddy tap, you're like, okay, your nervous system has had enough. And so now it's time to, and then usually that signals people to let go, right?
That's fascinating. Thanks for sharing that. See, I just learned something new today. There you go.
Yeah, it really does tell us something. So I want, you talked about, that's a big challenge. First of all, to learn that your mother has cancer. And then for your father to then say, by the way, we're moving, but we're not just moving out of this house to another one. We're not just moving to the other, the northern part of the
And back in those days, America was like going to the moon. It was so far away from we're talking about in the 70s, early 70s. This is like a long, long time ago. So was a major transition.
It's a planet away. So now you come to the United States, total different language, different culture, different everything. I have an idea of what you may have gone through because I was 11 when my family left California, and because my grandparents moved to Puerto Rico, my parents uprooted us and we moved to Puerto Rico.
No way. They're the same. Wow. In reverse, though. You
In
left.
reverse. Yeah. So you went to the West.
We went to California and you moved out of California.
I moved out of Cal for 3 years. And then because, there they speak English and Spanish, but my mom's like, she's a Spanish teacher, and she's like, you guys don't need to learn English. So we're going to put you cold turkey in the Spanish speaking schools. So we had to learn Spanish cold turkey. And my grandmother spoke Italian and Spanish. So at the beginning, I thought Spanish and Italian were the same
But
thing.
there's some similarities, though. There's a lot of, yeah.
Yeah, there are some similarities. It took me 2 or 3 months to figure out, oh, wait a minute, they're two
Like
separate.
Italian, this is Spanish. Yeah, right.
Yeah. But so I know what it's like, different culture, different everything, different climate, everything is different. So that being said, so most people would say, oh, that's, not only challenging, that's probably very traumatic for a child. Well, my question to you is what's been your most challenging experience? Because you had all of that and your mother had cancer and then everything that ensued once you got here. What's been your most challenging experience in your life?
In my whole life,
Mhm.
well, certainly losing my mom, I would say is one of them. And I was mama's boy. I totally I adored my mom. My mom was beloved. She wasn't just loved by men and women. She was beloved because her heart was so big and she loved everybody. So I felt in some ways so grateful that I was raised by a mom like that. But on the other hand, sad because I was only 22 when she passed away. But she lived long enough. At least we got through my teenage years and so on, right? So I think the first year after she passed away, I was so depressed. And my older brother kind of obviously he left, he did his own thing. My dad started drinking and even more so. So he's like, and then moved to Greece. So we had this beautiful family, and it's almost somebody threw a grenade and it exploded. So I was pretty much by myself actually.
Wow.
And I had a year where not that I wanted to die, I wanted to be with my mom. So it's different. And I would God, if I get hit by a bus today, I'm good to go. I don't really want to be here. I had to force myself to get out of bed for a year. And I kid you not, on the 1 year anniversary of my mom's passing, something happened to me because her closing statement to me the last thing my mom said to me before she died is honey, she says, don't worry about me. I'm going to be just fine. I just want you to be happy, end quote. And that was the quote. In a year later on the anniversary, that message came back. And I'm like, you know what? The best way to honor mama
To be happy.
is to be happy. And that kind of changed the trajectory of my life, and then I went to okay, what am I going to do now? And I went to graduate school in psychology and so on. And so I think that was a profound statement and event. It's very hard to compare traumas or to compare pain, in some ways. But I think that was one of them that changed the course of my life. I think there are other ones that happened. I think when I got burned out and I got so sick that I almost died in my early 40s from being a clinical, I think that hasn't impacted me certainly for the last 20 years. I think that was probably the other one.
Wow.
That was a big one because I wasn't listening to myself. I wasn't listening to the spirit. I was ignoring the signs were all over the place, and I ignored them until it was almost too late, really too late.
So those things that you were ignoring, did they continue to get bigger and bigger and fester larger till you couldn't ignore it anymore?
Yeah. So I had a private practice that I had a full practice. When I finally retired from that, I found out that most psychologists, if they last 10 years, that's about the average. And if they see 20, 25 patient hours a week, that's considered full time. Well, I did it for 18 years and I would see 45 patient hours every week. My wife used to say, you're going to have a heart attack. You're going to stop. And I'm like, no, I can handle it. Very confident, but arrogant too. I can handle it. Well, guess what? For 16 years, I did. And I was thriving. I was the biggest private practice. I was killing it, crushing it. And then my body started to break down. And then, of course, because I was disconnected with my body, I was all into serving other people. I was so into it, and I ignored it. Well, after a while, after 6 months go by, the pain started to interfere with my sleeping, started to interfere with it. So at some point, and for me, I'm a spiritual person, so physical pain, just like emotional or mental or spiritual, at some point brings you to your knees. And literally, when it did, and I'm like, okay, why is this happening to me? That was the question, right? I try to be a good husband, father, friend. I'm a community, all of that stuff. In that voice, whether you call it the Spirit of God, the Holy Ghost, whether the still small voice, your intuition, your higher self, whatever that voice to me, whatever that voice is, has communicated with me for 35 years, and it's always crystal clear, but very short. It's not like I get some long drawn, you know. And the voice said, Elia, you're not listening to me. I'm trying to take you in a different direction. So guess what I did with that download? I ignored it.
You're like a different direction.
This is one of the dumbest things of my life that I ignored it. Typically, I don't. Why did I ignore it? Because number one, well, I'm the doctor, I'm the psychologist, I got a big price, I make tons of money. I'm like, this is my role, this is what I do. So I ignored it. So when we ignore it, this is one of the few absolutes in life. Every time I've listened to that voice and acted on it, it has always worked out. Always, not 98% of the time, 100% of the time. However, every time I've heard the voice and ignored it, this isn't funny, but I've always paid the price. So that was the case back then. So now my physical get far, far worse. 6 more months go by. Now I'm desperate because it's happening multiple times a week. It's keeping me like I'm desperate, really desperate, not like the first time. Back again. Why is this happening to me? Same again, Elia. I'm trying to take you in a different direction. You're not listening to me. It then said, I want you to spread the light to a lot more people, which is actually an interesting statement and cryptic. But in my mind is like, well, how am I going to make money doing that? Like, how am I going to provide for my family? I know it's a natural response, right? Okay, that's not, what does that mean? What does that mean?
That's a pause button right there, because that is so universal for everyone that I can think of and know and come in contact with, because they get that divine download and they're like, but how am I going to make money at this? And it's like,
because I have young kids still at home. I had to provide for my family. Okay, well, that's what I don't know what that means actually. He didn't say this is how you're going to be on Oprah next week and you're going to make it. No, it wasn't like that.
Well, it's like, and the divine download that you had during the, did you say it was on the Ides of March, on March 15th, that you had the download?
The same thing.
Write the book, and you're like, and then you followed the lead, and oh my gosh, instead of the sphere, which you had a very successful sphere of influence and practice at that time, but it went that to, 50, 60,000 people that never even knew that even existed. You would have never have been, you wouldn't be here right now with me, right? As we
I know this is all true, but at the time, like when you get it, it's like it's a natural reaction to go, but then because I think God speaks to each one of us in the language that we understand. If somebody needs a whole dissertation or something, I think there was hesitation in me receiving that message. So there was a third sentence, and that's how it ended. And it's like, and if you don't change your ways, I'm going to call you home by the time you're 50. I was 42 at the time. The number of 50 though is important because my mother died when she was 51. So for me, when you have a parent that dies so young, you don't think you're going to live to be 80. You're going to think like, well, I'm going to be. So that was shocking to me.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And that's when I got it. And I went upstairs and I told my wife, I'm like, honey, I think I need to change. And it was scary. And you couldn't even do it. Like I couldn't even do it overnight because I had such a huge practice. You can get sued for abandonment. I had to like stop taking new referrals, start to work through the 45, 50, 60 people that I had just move them out. And, I tried, but unfortunately what happened is that my body had been gone through the ringer so much that like literally 45 days before I was set to retire, which was December 31st of that year, I crashed. My body finally gave out. Even though I was working less, I was even taking Fridays off for, self-care days. I hit the wall. And without boring you with all the gory details, spending 6 nights in the hospital, emergency, 2 surgeries, and almost exiting this world, as my surgeon said, I got the final download, which was, because I asked him, I said, why did this happen to me? I really want to know. I need to learn this lesson. And he goes, well, either excessive drinking or excessive stress. Well, I didn't drink at all. So all the things, the tens of thousands of hours, everything that I heard about, it was stored into my body, into my gut, and it was literally eating me alive. And at some point, even my liver started to shut down, which is that was really scary part because you were 1 day away. If you had waited,
you wouldn't be here.
You had waited because and I had hepatitis as a kid, so I know that. When I started getting jaundice and my wife realized that, she said, we got to go to the urgent care right now. Typically, my male kind of macho Greek thing was like, no, honey, I'll be okay, just like all the other times. Like this too shall pass. And the divine download was, Elia, you need to go right now. right now. And we went to urgent care and they did all the testing. They're like, we can't help you here. You got to go to the ER right now. Like I was like on my way out. Anyway, so I said, so when he said that to me, I'm like, okay, I will never get burned out again. This will never happen to me again. I'm chronologically, I'm coming up on my 20th year anniversary of that event. And I'm healthier physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And chronologically, I'm 20 years older because I realized that you can take care of everybody else, but if you don't practice self-care, you're going to go out. And that was a huge lesson for me. So my self-care, and that's part of the, the navigator mode too. The first key to navigation is self-care. Mine self-care is a non-negotiable. And people are like, well, isn't that selfish? When you say, because I tell people like practice self-care and this is how you do it and so on. I'm like, yes, and do more.
Yes, yes, yes. And you know what? You cannot, if your cup is empty, you cannot share with anybody from an empty cup. You have to have something in your cup in order to pour some out and share with others. So you have to fill your cup first. Same thing in a plane. They always have you put the oxygen mask on you first, because if you don't have the oxygen mask on yourself first, and then you end up passing out, now you become
You can't help anybody, right?
Can't help anybody else, and now you're a burden to the collective. And in first care responders, we're taught and trained, you have to preserve your well-being before anybody else, because if you get hurt in the process of trying to help someone else, now that's one more body that your colleagues have to tend with. And so self-care, you have to be selfish in that regard. And we have a negative connotation with the word selfish, but it's really not selfish. It is for the greater good of all. If I'm healthy, if I'm doing well, if my cup is full, I can give more than if my cup is half. If I only have a quarter cup or only 10% left in my cup, I can't really afford to give any when I only have 10% left of my cup. That should be, at least 70, 80, 90%.
So what's really funny, with these things, we check, 80% full, 70%, 30%. I mean, if I go under 50, I'm charging it all the time. I never even go under 50. Yeah. So why don't we do that with ourselves? And the funny thing is, the selfish part that you talked about is for most of us who are heart-centered people that love to serve other people. Yes. Practicing self-care is not going to make you a selfish SOB that it's me, myself, and I. It's not like that. As a matter of fact, it's exactly what you said, Lillian. You have a lot more energy and ability to help a lot more people and spread the light to a lot more people. It's kind of funny. That was a prophetic statement that I heard, and it has come to fruition completely. Not even in the way that I thought it was going to happen, but it has happened.
You have more love to give when you're happy.
That's right. Yeah. But even spreading the message, when he said, I want you to spread the light to a lot more people, and I'm like, he didn't explain how, like, I don't know what that means, but it has happened. That has been fulfilled. Every year, it keeps getting more and more. And
it will continue to fill you fully, so that you can continue to be the fullest expression of yourself as you continue to fill and serve others in this journey of happiness. Because I think that is something that more people need to make the conscious decision. You know what? I want to be happy, and not just a little happy. I want to be like joyously happy, because that is a magnifying, it's like a magnet. You draw others. They want to be around you when you're happy. It makes them happy to see you happy. And then that starts to spread, where more people get happier and happier. And then we have more creative expression. We have more ability to serve. We definitely have more energy when we're happy. When we're not happy, we don't have as much energy. We don't even sit the same. You see people who are not happy all kind of crouch down. People who are happy,
they're just leaning there, whoo,
let's go. And our arms are up in the air, and we're excited.
One other thing I want to share with you about the divine downloads, as you call them, is when I was younger, I used to ask why. I have a curious mind, like the psychology, whatever, like why. As I've gotten older, especially after that experience 20 years ago, I'm like, you know what? I don't need to ask why anymore. I trust it, because it's never led me down the wrong path. I don't have to. So I go from download to action, download to action, download to action. I don't need to ask why. It always works out. And you'll find out why eventually. And maybe sometimes not in this lifetime, but I think we find out eventually why, the why. It's okay. I don't need to waste my time trying to figure things out. Just move into action and follow the divine inspiration.
Follow the divine inspiration. So we're about to wrap up here. So I want to try something new with you that I've never done with anybody else here on my show before. I want to give you 9 words in rapid succession, and I want you to share the first thing that comes to your mind or comes to your heart.
Okay.
And then right after that, I want you to share with our listeners if you have any live events or online events that you might be doing soon that our listeners and viewers can tap into. Okay?
Sure.
Okay, so first word, so I'll say the word and you give immediately your first word that's your impression. Self,
Love.
dream,
Big.
success,
The word comes out. Can I repeat the same word? Success is love to me.
yeah,
It's like but I'll go back to that. Sorry, but that's
fine. That's
love.
perfectly fine.
Yeah.
It's the first thing that comes in. Opportunity,
Tons.
joy,
Enjoy
enjoy, family,
everything.
challenge,
Learning.
love.
Bliss.
Oh, bliss, bliss, bliss. Oh, I'm getting the chills as we're coming here to the end. I wish I could have you for another hour, so we will definitely have you back. So
It's been an honor and a pleasure, because you asked me questions that I've done over like 200 podcasts. And I continue doing like that 2 or 3 a week. You asked me questions that were challenging. You asked me things that nobody has ever asked me before, which is really refreshing, to be honest with you. So I have a question for you though, Dame. You said you were going to answer that, Dame.
Yes, yes, yes. So the short answer is that God has a very funny sense of humor. In 2013, oh my gosh, I'm sorry about that. In 2013, I had a friend she was a grand dame, and she informed me that I was nominated to be knighted in the Order of St. John. And I thought, what? How's that possible? I'm like, I knew she was a grand dame. I knew several people who had been knighted, men and women alike, but I never aspired to be knighted or never looked into, I didn't know anything other than a few people that I knew that happened to be knighted. And I was honored to know people who were knighted, both men and women. And so I thought, oh my gosh, wow, that's like being nominated for for an Oscar, holy cow. That's not even on my goal list, my vision board. Long story short, the next thing I know, I get an invitation and it's an announcement of my investiture. And that's not even the best part of the story, because I was knighted in Los Angeles at the Agape Center.
I know where that's at. I've been there. No way.
So what's more extraordinary about the story is not that I got knighted. What's extraordinary to me about this story is who I was knighted with, because I didn't even know, do they knight one person at a time? Do they do a group? I didn't know anything, right? And I'd never attended an investiture. Now I've been to many. The thing is, I was knighted with Jack Canfield, with Dr. Sandra Heilich-Haas, with Dr. Reverend Michael Beckwith, with Don Miguel Ruiz, the author of the 4 Agreements, Lisa Nichols. There were like 2 other people. The bottom line is, like, when I saw the announcement for the investiture, I was like, what's my name doing there? Because these people are it was interesting because just several years before I had told my best friend, I had a radio show and I was like, I would love to interview a lot of Oprah's guests on my show. And now here I was being knighted with, most of them had been on Oprah's show. And I was the only who had nothing to do with that. So long story short, that's how I was knighted. And then at the beginning, I also have the title of lady, which I don't use, but people have called me lady for like years, not knowing that I have that legal title. And so then right after the investiture, Her Excellency Countess Babrinskoy, she reached out to me and she's like, you are not to use the title lady. That's a different legal title.
Interesting. Okay.
You are knighted in the Order of St. John, and you are to use the title dame. Anything you do in public, written, online, in person, you always have to use dame because you are representing the priory.
What's the equivalent of for men? If dame is for women, what is for men?
Men are sirs. So men and women.
Oh, sir. Okay, yeah. I
so
see.
like Sir Richard Branson.
Yeah. Sure, I got,
So
yeah.
men are sirs and women are dames. And it's the order of hospitallers in Europe who 1100 years ago, it used to be that only the nobles had access to healthcare. So 1100 years ago, this group of nobles got together for the purpose of building the first hospitals to create healthcare provision
Wow.
for men, women, and
Wow.
children. So
What a great honor. Thank you for sharing that story. That's beautiful. So Dame Lillian, I bow.
no, there's no need for that. So, oh my gosh, Dr. Elia, I can't wait to have you back. I really look forward to having you back again and sharing more. I can't wait to dive into your book and read it and kind of dissect it and expand the happiness on this globe, which is so much needed. Please, please, please promise you'll come back.
I
And
will come back in a heartbeat, Your Majesty. I'm gonna tease you though about it. You know I'm gonna tease you about it.
you can call your majesty if you allow me to call you your majesty, because
No, okay, that's not
you
good.
are
No,
magic.
no, but I'm very grateful, and you know, I love our interview. What else can I don't know what else to say, because you challenged me. You're like, okay, this is different. This is wow. This is a different perspective, different questions. I love that. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. For ciao for now, my friends and gems. We love and adore you. Make sure you like this episode, hit that notification bell so that you get notified the next time we have another upload of a new video. Do share this and connect with Dr.
Yeah,
Elia.
dreliagourgouris.com is my website, but find me on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook. I mean, I have a very unique name, so Elia Gourgouris, there's nobody else. So just find me and connect with me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and your messages and your feedback. So yeah.
Yes. And you'll see this posted also on Facebook, so you can connect to him and myself there. So thank you, my friends and gems. Have a great rest of your day. Ciao for now.
Ciao. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Lillian, you're the best. Like seriously. Wow. Like, wow. You know, you never know, like, you know, because I have an agent that books me and all that stuff. So you never know. Like, I never know. But when we first reached out to me, there was something you said. I'm like, I was intrigued by you, and not knowing anything about you. For the day, intrigued me even more. And then we didn't connect. Remember that one time we had like a disconnect, and I thought, and you know, but it was all the divine providence, because we were supposed to meet today and have this talk today. And I can't thank you enough. Where are you located? Where are you at?
I'm in Huntington Beach, California.
Oh my gosh.
Beach.
So I grew up in Santa Monica.
Oh, so you're just
like,
5.
yeah, that's where I grew up. I'm Santa Monica. I'm middle school, high school, UCLA, PhD. Everything was in you know, Southern like LA or West LA actually, you know.
So are you still in that area?
No, I'm in Boulder, Colorado, but I am going to come out next month. I would love if to get together and have breakfast, lunch, or something. I would love it. I'm
Yes.
coming out and going to the Rolling Stones concert with my son, who's and yeah, so that's what he wanted, and he's like, Dad, I want to have this experience with you. I'm like, son, let's do it. So July 10th is the concert. So I'm going to come out, you know, that's after the 4th of July. I don't know exactly the dates, but I would love to like meet up and just you're not that far away.
Yeah, let's definitely do that. And oh my gosh, I think it would be so awesome for you to interview Mick Jagger, because that man has done what brings him happiness. And he's over 80 years old now, and he's still dancing, moving, and grooving, which is what keeps him young and happy.
No,
And
I mean, I'm very curious to see what is their music going to be like, because I've always enjoyed their music, and I know this their last tour. But I've seen him on television even last year with Taylor Swift, whatever. Like, how is this guy 80 years old and has that kind of energy? Like, what does he do? Like,
because he never stops. But then asking him more specifically, I think it would be a fascinating interview, especially since you're an expert.
Well, how am I going to get him in an interview? I don't know. I mean, I'm just going to the concert to dance. But hey,
you know what? All you have to do is set the intention, and magical things happen. And hey, you know, between you and myself and the connections we have, that's probably something we can make happen.
Wouldn't that be an amazing thing to interview somebody who has lived his calling in life for over 60 years? I think they started in the early 60s. So yeah, 60s. And he's still going strong. Like, how is he doing that?
And he still has a light step when he dances. There's like no slowing down. So
yeah. It's remarkable. Like, I can't wait just to experience that, because anyway, yeah.
I think that'll be a great, oh my gosh.
So let's stay connected. When I have my tickets and I know when I'm coming out, and my I hope we can connect anyway.
Okay, yeah, definitely. Okay. We'll make it happen. Okay. Take care. Ciao for now.
Okay. Bye.